Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Adipata Basum Alvi, a student of Economics Department at Shahjalal University of Science and Technology. Today I am going to explain balance of payments adjustment in the case of an exogenous increase in exports and imports. To adjust balance of payment disequilibrium, we have four instruments. These are elasticity approach, monetary approach, multiplier approach, and absorption approach. Now I am going to follow the multiplier approach. The multiplier analysis of the balance of payments is also known as the foreign trade multiplier. It was introduced by Herod before the Keynesian theory of the multiplier. Using this approach, I have used standard Keynesian textbook model with the inclusion of the foreign sector and found the following 12 equations. Our first topic is adjustment in the case of exogenous increase in exports. At first, we are substituting equation 3 and 4 into equation 6 and considering the variations. This leads us to equation number 13, which is dB is equal to dx0 minus dm0 minus mu dy. This equation states the final change in BOP, that is, the change in the balance of payments is equal to the difference between exogenous change in export and the change in imports. Here you can see that the change in imports is partly exogenous, which is dm0, and partly induced, which is mu dy. Here dy is given by the multiplier formula for equation number 13. In case of an exogenous increase in exports, we assume no other exogenous change occurs, which means dc0, di0, and dm0 are all equal to 0. As a result, the equation 13 becomes dB is equal to dx0 minus mu dy, and dy is equal to 1 by 1 minus b minus h plus mu into dx0. Combining these two equations, we found dP is equal to 1 by 1 minus b minus h plus mu into dx0, which is our equation number 14. This equation derives the precise condition under which the adjustment is complete, incomplete, or more than complete. If the marginal propensity to spend, or b plus h, is smaller than 1, then our dB becomes greater than 0 and less than dx0. Here is the graphical representation of exogenous increase in export. At first, we are going to draw the balance of payment schedules x minus m and s minus I. These two are both the function of y, and the equilibrium will obtain at the intersection of these two schedules. As you can see, the x minus m schedule is downward sloping because we are subtracting an even greater amount of imports from an exogenously given amount of exports. And the positive intercept reflects the assumption that the autonomous component of imports is smaller than export. The assumption is necessary to ensure that it is in principle possible to reach balance of payments equilibrium at a positive level of income. And you can also see the S minus I schedule is increasing on the assumption that the marginal propensity to spend is smaller than 1. The fact that the two schedules intersect at a point lying on the y-axis reflects the assumption that in the initial situation the balance of payments is in equilibrium. Now, an increase in exports shifts the x minus m schedule to x prime minus m, and the new intersection occurs at E prime, where the balance of payments shows a surplus of BE prime. But the surplus is smaller than the initial increase in exports, that is AE. This is a possibility of under-adjustment. From equation 14, we can say that adjustment is complete or dB is equal to 0 when the marginal propensity to spend is equal to 1, which means the induced increase in imports exactly offsets the initial exogenous increase in exports. But the case of over-adjustment is also possible. It happens when the marginal propensity to spend is greater than 1. That is, the induced increase in imports is greater than the initial exogenous increase in exports. From the economic point of view, the greater the marginal propensity to spend, the greater ceteris paribus the multiplier. This means a higher income increase given the exogenous increase in exports and finally a greater increase in induced imports. The case of over-adjustment implies that the S minus I schedule is downward sloping, as shown by the broken line in the graph. However, the slope must be smaller in absolute value than the slope of X minus M schedule for stability to obtain. In fact, from equation 10, we can see that B plus H minus 1 is less than mu. Therefore, over-adjustment cannot be ruled out based on consideration for stability. If the country is stable in isolation, P plus H less than 1 and only under adjustment can occur. But since we are dealing with an open economy, we must accept the possibility of over adjustment as well as the exact adjustment. Our next topic is adjustment in the case of exogenous increase in inputs. When there is an exogenous increase in input, it can have an impact on a country's balance of payment, which is a record of all economic transactions between a country and the rest of the world. There are two extreme cases. Case 1 assumes the commonly followed procedure of considering del M naught while keeping C naught and I naught constant, which means the increase in the exogenous expenditure on foreign output is accompanied by a simultaneous decrease of the same amount in the exogenous expenditure by residents on domestic output. In case 1, only M naught varies. As a result, equation 7 and 13 becomes dy is equal to 1 by 1 minus b minus h minus mu into dm naught. db is equal to minus dm naught minus mu dy, which leads us to equation 16, which is db is equal to b plus h minus 1 by 1 minus b minus h minus mu into dm naught. Since 1 minus b minus h plus mu is greater than 0 by the stability condition, incomplete adjustment will take place accordingly as b plus h can be greater than less than or equal to 1. If the marginal propensity to spending is smaller than any induced decrease in import is following the decrease income caused by the initial exogenous increase in imports is not enough to completely restore balance of payment equilibrium. In the opposite case, balance of payment will go into surplus. In the figure, we can see that as a result of increase in import, X minus M schedule shifts to X minus M prime, and the intersection occurs at E prime where B of P shows a deficit. This is smaller than the initial increase in imports measured by vertical distance between X minus M and X minus M prime. Our next extreme case is case 2. When the exogenous increase in import is not accompanied by any reduction to exogenous of expenditure on domestic output by resident, we have dm is equal to dc naught plus di naught, means there is no effect on increase. As a result, no adjustment is possible through induced changes in imports, the balance of payment determined by full amount of the exogenous increase in imports. That is db is equal to minus dm. Here, the downward shift of the x minus m schedule is accompanied by an identical downward shift of the s minus I schedule, so that the value of y does not change and the balance of payment shows a deficit. E prime is equal to dm naught. Beside two extreme cases, there is a third case which is intermediate case. In this case, we introduce a coefficient q, and q lies between 0 and 1. And Q measures the relationship between the change in their autonomous expenditure by residents on domestic output and the change in their autonomous expenditure in foreign outputs. Now, let us define home and foreign outputs by H and F respectively. Using this, we found a set of equations, that is equation number 17. And assuming Q is the same for both consumption and investment expenditure, we find equation 18. Now, combining these two equations, we find dc naught plus di naught minus dm naught is equal to minus q dm naught. And so, the multiplier formula becomes dy is equal to 1 by 1 minus b minus h plus mu into dx naught minus q dm naught. When export changes, we have db is equal to minus 1 minus b minus h by 1 minus b minus h plus mu into dx naught. And when imports exogenously change, we get dB is equal to b plus h minus 1 minus mu into 1 minus q by 1 minus b minus h plus mu into dm naught. This is our equation number 22, and equation 22 explains all intermediate cases between two exchange cases previously discussed. I hope my explanation is helpful to you. Thank you for your patience.